We are glad you joined us. It's Yuen.
And Mike.
In today's episode, we explore emotional resilience, its elements, and what it means to us.
We discuss why we need it, how we can cultivate it, support each other, and why we need to make it a regular practice instead of only when required. Welcome to the Imperfect Clinician. Today, the Imperfect Clinician is going to discuss emotional resilience. So until now, we were talking about the whole journey, and we had a bit of a wrap-up where we wanted to collate everything in thinking what's in it for me. But in order to achieve that, we need something that's going to underpin it and something that's going to put us in a patient and consistent formula to maintain the focus on our cause, on our purpose. So why do we need emotional resilience?
I think we've got a lot on our plate on a day-to-day basis, let alone extra things that we add on. So we have daily stresses, work, commitments, baggages. So when I talk about commitments, it might be parenting, it might be caring responsibilities, society's expectation, so what you feel you need to achieve or accomplish, culture, bigger things, unexpected things like the pandemic, the war in Ukraine at the moment, climate change, racism, gender bias. So we've got the small day-to-day things and the bigger societal issues as well.
Okay, so according to McCarthy and Childer, the elements of emotional resilience are divided into three pillars. So there is a physical element. So we're talking here about strength, energy, vitality, and our good health.
So when you talk about that, for me, it reminds me of self-care. Perhaps how we eat.
Yeah, exactly. Looking after ourselves, being fit and ready in a way, in a good physical state to come across our daily struggles.
And I think sometimes a lot of people will say, I can't find the time, or I'm really struggling to fit, 5 minutes for my day because I'm rushing in the morning, whether I'm dropping the kids off, and then I rush to work. When I come home, I have to sort the kids out. And then when I finish the day, I'm just too tired to do anything else. So I comfort eat, or I numb, or I comfort drink, and then I go to bed. There is no time for myself. What are your thoughts around that?
So that is a question for how much are we prepared to invest in order to clear our mind. And it is hard. I mean, we have busy lives. Always there's life in a fast lane, and we are always chasing the unchaseable. We have so many things on our plate, and that it's just impossible to gather around. But I think that we owe it for ourselves to find some capacity in our busy lives to have a bit of a breather, to make sure that we can eat better, that we can find time for exercising. In my case, what does work is scheduling it, agreeing it with the family, what I'm going to do in order to maintain the level head and to have body that's healthy, to have right nutrition, to avoid things that are making me heavy and unfulfilled.
So I want to bring in a quote which is a big thing for me at the moment. This quote, it's from James Clear's Atomic Habits book. He says, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our system. So goal is your desired outcome. Your system is the collection of daily habits. So when Mike and I were talking about, he really enjoyed biking, but he couldn't really find time to do it. And so what he said about scheduling in, and so we decided to set a time 2 days a week where he's going to do it.
Yeah, that's the base minimum. And this is something that allowed me to completely transform the amount of time I spend riding. Because in the past, it was, oh, it's not a good time now. It's not a good time, I'll do tomorrow. And then, I don't know, the weather doesn't work out. Now it's regardless of whatever is happening in the world, unless there's something really unusual that I haven't got my bike with me, for example, yeah? And I think, just to give you an example of how it worked, before I did it, I probably cycled on average, I don't know, 10 miles per 2 weeks, if that. Now I manage within 2 weeks to cycle, I don't know, 40, 50 miles. And that's something that allows you to clear your head, get a bit of fitness. I've noticed that it improved my body.
10 miles, about 16 kilometers for those people who don't have a different metric of measurement.
Distance.
And I think I wanted to explore a little bit more. What stopped you from asking for the time?
Well, if it's scheduled, it's there.
Yeah, what stopped you from asking for the time before it was scheduled?
It's like trying to take off the focus of myself and trying to say, well, actually, I don't want to cause the trouble to the family by burdening everybody with the fact that I have to go off to burden you with the kids, burden you with whatever needs doing at a time. And then I say, oh, I'll do it another time. I'll catch up later.
So do you think there are some elements of not prioritizing yourself?
Yeah, well, yeah, because if you feel responsible for others, you put those people ahead of yourself. But this is false thinking, because if you can't look after yourself, how are you going to do for the others? Yeah, you're going to commit more time to them, but the quality of it is going to be ineffective. And what's more, I think that if I can focus a little bit on myself, that allows me to see what you need and therefore support you better. Because, if I'm putting everything in it and then all of a sudden you, for example, don't, it feels like there is an imbalance. And I feel that when I abuse your generosity, that you say, right, you go, don't worry, about biking or whatever, or even if you don't say anything and I sort of just go for it without having it planned, is just using your time. And I feel a bit guilty.
So do you think not being able to prioritize yourself, is it related to self-worth? Because how you see yourself in terms of...
I think it comes down to shame that you sort of don't look after at this particular time others, and you sort of shame and say, oh, shame on you. You should be looking after others rather than looking after yourself. And being conscious of it and discussing it with you allowed me to step back and say, well, actually, if I can make this time, because we can't stretch time. This is the only thing that there is complete scarcity of that resource, yeah? We have only so much time. There's so much of the waking time. There's so much time that we don't work, that we have to really plan it very carefully. And now I want to consciously use this time to make sure that not only everybody around me, but also I'm happy and do something for myself. It allows me to understand better needs of the others. Because if I'm, fully committed, I do everything to 100% for everybody else.
And nothing for yourself.
How do I know what others need? If everything is done for them by me, by others around them. People need to find time to look, well, I need to find time where it's going to benefit just me, just to do it for myself. We were talking about, staring at the ceiling. That's part of it.
So I think the biggest thing that I hope people would reflect on, because this is something that I had to learn and be able to draw boundaries for myself, and I was able to identify that and work as a unit with you to help you address those fears and those barriers in place and set up a new system of sort, a collection of weekly habits in this case. And to tell you that if you go, it doesn't reflect badly on you as, I don't know, a parent or a partner or whichever it is. And I wanted to ask, because I think this is really important that people sometimes don't see, because we think about, what if I go? How will it affect the people in the family or the people that I was supposed to be spending time with? How do you feel now doing it since February? How do you feel now that you're able to cycle regularly?
Well, first of all, I think it's quite important to make sure that everybody involved has similar approach to it, because if there's an imbalance, there's going to be either finding excuses or finding blame on others or ourselves.
I need you to be a bit more specific about that. What did you mean about imbalance?
Imbalance meaning
so give me an example based on this cycling situation.
Okay, so if, because you are doing your yoga and meditation in the morning, that's the time that's yours. If I don't do anything for myself, it feels like, oh, she finds time, but she doesn't think I should have time for myself.
Okay? Even though you didn't ask for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you feel like everybody else has to figure out what you want. No, this is about what you mentioned about setting the boundaries, that it's important to reflect on it in ourselves, to stop looking for happiness in others and try to find it in ourselves.
If it's only yourself that's responsible to ask for what you need.
Exactly. And this is the thing. If you are doing things for yourself, for your body and mind, let's call it a self-care package, whatever you want to do, whether it's reading and all that. So I can see, for example, let's say you're reading all afternoons and I'm running around the kids and I'm, I don't know, cooking or whatever. After some time, you're going to start to think, well, actually, hang on. I haven't got any time for myself. But is this because you can't see it? Mm-hmm. That I'm, not doing anything for myself? So I think it's important to find this balance that we both understand what we need.
Yes, and ask for it, because nobody can read your mind.
Exactly, but I think we still have to, even though we ask for it ourselves, I still think it's important to reach out to others to say, is it enough? Is it sufficient? Do you feel happy with it? Just to have a little bit of
check-in,
confirmation and a check-in on how we feel about it. Yeah, absolutely
agree.
Okay,
so we talk about the first physical element.
Going back to 3 pillars. Okay, yes. So let's, because we're gonna venture off, we're going to say, so the 3 pillars were physical elements, psychological elements, and social elements. Okay, so now let's focus on psychological elements, which are adjustability, attention and focus, self-esteem, self-confidence as well, emotional awareness and regulation, self-expression, and thinking and reasoning abilities.
So I think probably I would like to break it down to parts that make sense for me, sort of like a start to finish in that psychological element. So I would start with emotional awareness and regulation, because that, for me, it means being mindful about how I'm feeling and identifying emotions. So mindfulness doesn't have to be closing your eyes, sitting cross-legged. It can be walking. It can be just like what Mike said earlier on, staring into the ceiling. And I like Oprah's quote. She said, the best thing you can give yourself is time. Not too far off from what we talk about self-care. It's to actually give yourself some, even if it's 10 seconds after something has happened, to give yourself a bit of a pause to think, what am I actually feeling? And being able to then identify the emotions. So then that goes into the self-expression and thinking abilities, because I think you need language to identify emotion. So one of the quote from Rumi, she said, "Heart is the sea and language is the shore. Whatever sea includes will hit the shore." And so for us to be able to use the right language, it will help not just our body, but people around us to help support us appropriately. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that whereas when we were talking about physical elements, that's talking about the body. Psychological elements is talking about the head, what's the thoughts that we are with, the awareness and mindfulness that you mentioned of everything that's going on in our head, of how we perceive ourselves, how we reconcile our thoughts and ideas with our daily life, and also how we comprehend the world around us. I mean, how we learn, how we analyze, and what conclusions we draw out of that.
So I think I want to utilize the language part and use one of the learnings that I've gained recently, the difference between stressed and overwhelmed. So I use those terms interchangeably, but then realized they're actually quite different. Do you use them interchangeably prior to knowing this?
As a shortcut, you often do. And without setting the definition, it's hard to differentiate sometimes certain expressions. And I think this is one of them.
Yes.
These two are, two of those.
So stress is defined as feeling out of control, overload, and unpredictable. And overwhelmed, from Merriam-Webster's dictionary, it means to be completely overwhelmed or overpowered by thoughts or feelings. So I just want to think of a situation where, or two situations where it's one is stress and one is overwhelmed. And to be able to use the word properly or accurately really helps me to identify how I'm feeling, and also allow me to seek for support that is appropriate for however that I'm feeling. So if I feel stressed out, maybe it's at work, I would ring Mike and say, really stressed out at work, I might need to work extra time, I need to do X, Y, and Z, pick up the kids, start dinner, whatever it is. Whereas if I'm overwhelmed, I'll come home and I'll go, I've got a migraine. I just need paracetamol and I'm straight to bed. Or maybe I just come home not being able to speak and then just go and lie down straight away. Or I just go, migraine, and I just go straight to sleep. So there is no handover of such, because with stressed, I'm able to tell you what I need from you, how I'm feeling now. When I'm overwhelmed, I just can't. I think from a child perspective, sometimes one child will come in and just burst out crying, not being able to even put it in words. And I think adults, we have moments like that too, whether we need just a breather and we're not even capable of passing on the message. What do I need from you? Just migraine, and then that's it. I'm down and I'm out. It doesn't have to be migraine. Sometimes just me feeling completely overwhelmed, and I'll say to I just need a minute outside in the garden, or I'm out for a walk. And then that's it. And then he has to pick up the rest in terms of like the children and things. And it's both ways. But I notice by using the words accurately, now that we both know it, so making sure that whoever that listens to your change in language is also aware of the difference. And so they can support you better.
Yeah, I think when it comes to stress and the overwhelmed feeling, I mean, stress could be good and stress could be bad. The good stress can put you into attack mode where you can focus sharper and do more, you're more efficient, and it just works motivating. It's like a stage stress, for example, for people who feel the buzz and they can just get on with doing things. When it lasts too long, or if it's slightly pushing
Would
the
you not
limit.
use the word challenge then instead of stress?
No, because I would personally use challenge to a certain event or something. Stress is just general. It could be something not really defined. It could be stress like a camera stress, okay, or stress before we start recording.
Mm-hmm.
That stress, I wouldn't say it's a challenge. I mean, the whole podcasting thing for us could be a challenge, but you feel a bit stressed, you feel a bit tingly, and it's excitement. It's something that is not really stopping you, it's not blocking you.
Yes,
Whereas
what
when
psychologists refer as stress, EU,
yeah,
stress.
and then after some time of not addressing it, or if it gets if we get a bit too much, worked up,
So
that can change into bad stress.
So I think the difference is chronic and long term, or acute or short term, because acute short term can have more protective and beneficial qualities, whereas chronic or long term stress have more harmful effects.
Yeah, exactly. When you have the overwhelmed situation, you feel like you're out of control and you start to become detached. You don't form the part of the event, situation, challenge, whatever it is. You just become, right, I'm out of here. This is not for me. And you're just 100% elsewhere. You cannot liaise with the situation. You lose the ability to communicate. You lose the ability to find what would make you better other than just stepping away. That's the only thing you want to do from the overwhelmed situation, is to step away.
It's just like some of my patients will say, I just want to leave the house and never come back.
Exactly. And this is a situation where it's out of your control. You cannot control. You can control stress. You can control even bad stress because you know that is bad for you. You can identify it. Whereas overwhelmed is going beyond that point.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
You just want it to end, whatever it is. But the end of it doesn't mean that you can find a solution to it. There is no solution other than just completely, switching yourself off or going away, stepping away from the situation.
Yeah, so we talk about self-expression and thinking abilities. Then for me, the next would be the thinking and reasoning abilities, because I have to make sure that I'm not acting impulsively. So if I am able to, if something happens, I'm able to identify the emotions, then I'm able to, from identifying the emotions, have a pause for me to acknowledge it, address it, identify it, and then work on my action. Then I'm not impulsively speaking or writing emails. I know by experience that that is not a good idea. I think this quote is something that is on my board in my consultation room at the moment. So it says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And the quote's from Viktor Frankl. So what do you think you need to cultivate that space?
Well, for me to cultivate that space for thinking and reasoning correctly, you just need, for me, I need perspective. I need to sort of step away, or even remotely, virtually in my head, think about it from the outside to analyze all the other factors that can contribute to it. But for this, you need a bit of space. If you're pushed and you can't create that space around you, you make rushed decisions. You're not really thinking through and thinking comprehensively about the situation. But I think over time, I've learned to create that space. I can be quite impulsive in a way of, quick thinking, because quick thinking for me has always been quite important, that, because you don't waste time on doing nothing. You just, make decision, go, next. But then with time and with few mistakes made, with few situations that didn't go particularly well, I suppose, you start, of course, there's always capacity for things to go wrong in any circumstances, but you are able to make your decisions, or more importantly, even reasoning behind them, more comprehensive and more complex. And I think that I've learned, and I'm still learning to get better at it. I think it's important skill to work, because it's part of the emotional resilience, to be able to create that space which allows you to commit enough time for thinking to draw the right conclusions from the reasoning.
And what helped you with that? So you mentioned about mistakes and learning from past experience. What else do you need on a day-to-day basis or a regular basis to give you that space?
I think that comes from reflection and from experience. When you make mistakes, when you sometimes judge things a little bit too quickly, or you're not thorough enough, you may not have the full set of data. And I think I started to form opinions a bit better after I have more information available to me. And I think when in a clinical situation, when I'm dealing with a problem, the questioning and the consultation skills allow you to, and honing them over many years and many consultations, allow you to approach things a bit more methodically, more systematically. You get into the routine of asking questions, and whilst you're asking questions, you do two things. You gain time to think about, and to find your reasoning, to remember things, to think about what other questions you might ask. And it also increases the data set you're operating on, because you gain more information rather than, all right, there is a rash. There you go. Off you go. There's a cream. That's not sufficient. You need to find more.
What you're saying is being curious.
Yeah, it's being curious, and it's being more reflective. Curiosity is where you find out more, and reflection is where you are analyzing what you know and comparing those two. Comparing the curiosity with your reflection, or with your knowledge, whatever you know, or where to find the answer to it.
And I have first-hand experience with this very, very recently. So I was not able to attend a meeting that was very important to me. It was about anti-racism and about belonging. And instead of the usual, don't worry about it, la-di-la-di-la, you said instead, how do you feel about it? And I wanted to ask, why did you change your response?
Well, as we learn more, even through, doing this podcast and just talking about things, growing as people, we realize that acknowledging the feelings becomes more important than consolation. If you just say, oh, don't worry about it, it's going to be fine, there'll be more meetings, that's just shutting down your feelings about it, your initial response. We always respond with feelings. I think whatever the situation is, first of all, is the feelings that start our response. Brain kicks in much later. And I think it's important to make sure that we acknowledge this sequence of events. That first comes the feelings, and the bigger the decision, the bigger the, not damage, but also impact of the situation, the greater the feelings. And you need more time to work on them. And if you realize that this is your first step, then everything else after that is just going down the hill. It's just enjoying the ride in that terms. Because, first you acknowledge, yes, how do you feel it? Okay, that's how you feel. And now what you can do about it. And you come to the conclusion, right, there'll be more meetings, there'll be other things that might keep you occupied and you can, learn from. And so these are the actions. Actions come after feelings.
I
Not
agree.
first action, forget about it, don't worry about it, they'll be fine. Because you're just shutting down the first response we have, which is always feelings.
And also for me as a listener, when I hear somebody say that, whether it's in an adult conversation or people at work or friends or children, it doesn't feel that you are acknowledging and accepting the feelings. I think in this situation, it really helped me. It sort of gave me space to reflect on my emotions and pause. I think pause is the biggest button that we forget to press. We always want to fast forward, or rewind and go back to somewhere that we really enjoy. But actually pausing and say, what or how does it actually make me feel? Why is it making me feel this way? And actually, are they more wise to that question or just a superficial one? And then work on that. So I just want to say thank you. It's been really helpful.
When you say pause, for me, pause equals perspective. It's just allows the space for reflection on, right, this is the time to think. That's the space you're creating for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah? So
then I want to say, after having the thinking and reasoning abilities, then I'm able to regain my attention and focus. Because if not, my mind will just keep going back to that feeling that I'm trying very hard to push away or numb or sweep under the carpet. And then what you said about perspective, it then allow me to readjust my perspective, and then I can respond accordingly. So the next one was about self-esteem and self-confidence.
Yeah, I think they often come in one sort of context, but they are a little bit different. For me, the difference between them is that self-esteem, it's how we see ourselves, and with regards to self-confidence, is how we are interacting with others.
Mm-hmm.
So the self-esteem is how do we look in the mirror and what do we see in there? Obviously, psychologically and in brain and emotions or whatever. This is our self-esteem. How we see each other, how we would like to see each other. And there's a big check with self-confidence. How do we want to come across? And how do we feel we can come across in front of others?
So I would say then self-esteem is a precursor to self-confidence, because self-esteem reflects on our own self-worth and our own perception of self. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that self-esteem as such comes with practice, working on yourself, on your failures or the things that go back. So on reflection, upon experience that we gather over the years. Whereas self-confidence builds on it, on how we can transform our thoughts about ourselves, how do we feel, into how do we feel about coming in front of others.
Yes, I had a day when one of our daughter was unwell, and because I had to work from home and I had to ring my patients, and she wasn't unwell to the point where she was sleeping all day. And so in order to distract her, and so she's not shouting on the phone, she's not shouting next to me whilst I was on the phone to my patient, the only way for me to distract her was through YouTube. And at the end of the day, I just felt very, very guilty. And there was a lot of shaming language in my head. And I think I had to sit with the discomfort with the pain rather than numbing it or pushing it away. And I had this with all the shaming neural pathway that's automatically built in since I was young. I was forcing myself to have this mantra in my head where I go, it doesn't define you as a mom, it doesn't define you as a person, it doesn't define you as a mom, it doesn't define you as a person. I have to keep repeating that until I get to a more stable level, I guess. And I think this reflects on the self-esteem, what you talk about. It comes from introspection, a lot of inner work, and a lot of failures, a lot of falling down and coming back up again. So what's the social aspects?
Yeah, so the third pillar, according to my criterion Childer, is social elements. So the relationship, like interpersonal relationship, whether it's within work, your kids, parents, partner, community, people you interact with in general. Also, it affects the group conformity, likability, communication, and cooperation. So when we talked about the physical elements being equivalent of the body, the physical elements, psychological elements being part of your head, whereas this one's more heart. So how is your heart coming across towards others? How much effort you put into communication, cooperation, engagement with others, family, partners, wives, husbands, whatever. And what's your thoughts on that?
I think this really ties into what we talked about in our 6th episode about fitting in, belonging, because I think this is really about finding your own tribe. It might be that you're still looking for it. It's communicating using the language that you equipped yourself with, and having a space. It doesn't have to be a space at home. Sometimes people are not lucky enough to have that. Sometimes it's a space at work. Sometimes it's just one person that they feel safe, or I should say psychologically safe, to talk about vulnerabilities, to share joys and fears, and being able to speak up. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that completely agree 100% here with how we approach the fitting and belonging in the social aspect, because this is purely interaction with others. And how we communicate is a big part of it. We've discussed how to work on communication in the past in one of our first episodes, as this is one of the key elements, finding the right language, which I'm still learning, you're still learning, and it's something that I want to make sure that we put enough effort to, because I don't think we have the vocabulary that we use is sufficient to name our emotions. It's like, we can name so many dishes, but not many emotions. We are unable to distinguish certain emotions, and I think it's the key to understand how we fit in and how we belong amongst others. I think that when we're talking about like joys and fears, can we really identify them? Or is it something that comes with a great difficulty? It's not always clear cut, and in life there's always shades of grey in that respect. And all of those 3 pillars, and probably even more that we want to, whenever we discuss about the resilience, and especially emotional resilience, comes to the conclusion that it is a muscle. And there is a quote from Alicia Moore saying that resilience is a muscle. Flex it enough, and it will take less effort to get over the emotional punches each time.
I absolutely agree. I think we cannot avoid the pain and suffering in life. And the more you practice resilience, the better you are at doing it. So the simplest thing is, if I have to repeat the mantra 50 times at the start, with practice, I do it 45 times.
Yes, but how do you practice resilience where you can be overwhelmed with things because things get into us? And how do we find what it takes to build this emotional resilience?
I think that's why all three pillars are interlinked. For me, 1 and 2 was 1, 2, and 3 really, but the first thing for me is the self-care and having the boundaries. If I don't have something in place where I meditate twice a day, where I do my yoga every single day without fail, if I don't have those boundaries in place to keep me at a level where I feel relatively stable or in equanimity, I guess, I feel that things get to me quicker. I feel that I call them sticky emotions. They stick onto me for way longer than I would want to let them. And so when I'm able to set those daily habits to start off with, it helps me to gain some clearer perspective because I don't have additional things added to my plate. I don't have tiredness. I don't have frustration. I don't have, 30 minutes off my head clear of what do I need to do today? Who's shouting?
And going back to what we were talking about in previous episodes, it needs to be time that we choose how we go about it, because it's not like we're gaining capacity from numbing ourselves by watching, I don't know, videos or movies or something that doesn't make us more aware and more mindful. I think it's important to distinguish numbing and distinguish working on ourselves and finding capacity and finding space to relax, to gain perspective.
And I think perhaps for me, the easiest thing is to listen to your body, see how you actually feel when you do something. If you make a conscious choice to go, yeah, I'm going to eat, I don't know, pizza today. And after eating it, I go, yes, I actually feel better. Then you are able to choose more with more intention rather than, oh, I'm stressed out, I'm going to eat the pizza and then feel guilty afterwards. So
conscious choices. The conscious choices
might be the same, but the consciousness and the intention part of it is it's vastly different. And so whatever that you choose to do, make sure you do it with the clear intention. And for me, to be able to have that clear intention is in that moment having a 30-second, 1 minute pause to think, what do I actually need? And in order for me to build in this or to automatically build in this 1 minute pause each time, it means I have to look at what I need on a day-to-day or weekly basis.
So would you say that is like a small purposes? What's the purpose of me relaxing one way or another? What's the little, because the big purpose is what we talked before about, the idea in our lives that we want to follow. But I think that you're looking for a purpose in having a pizza, purpose in going for a bike ride, purpose in exercising, purpose in going for a swim or run. Does it have to be a purpose or not really?
I think for me, I go to something that makes me feel better in myself.
So that's the mini purpose?
In some ways, because the reason for me to take care of myself is so that I can present the best version of myself to everyone around me, whether it's home or whether it's at work. Because if I'm angry and I'm shouting, I am not acting according to my values. Yes, I'm stressed out, but it shows it's my inability to control my emotions. And I accept that can happen, but I don't like it when it happens. And I know that this is not what my values are. And so what can I do to make sure that, first of all, when I say something, it's coming from a clear head, it's coming from true intention, and I don't say that and I go, oh crap, I shouldn't have said that. I think it's having a lot of trial and error with all of these, and I got to somewhere, hopefully, with a lot of practice, somewhere where I feel stable some of the time. I wouldn't say most of the time because that's still ongoing practice.
Okay, so thank you for saying all the important things today. And now, how do you incorporate you working on your emotional resilience into daily habits?
That's where I talked about the yoga meditation. I didn't start yoga until, I don't know how long. It has been more than a few years, but I had to do a lot of trial and errors. I tried lots of kickboxing, weights, cardio training, HIIT training. I think it's finding something that you really enjoy, finding something that you can be creative, finding something that you can just be. And that is important.
Good, amazing. I think that to incorporate emotional resilience is to make small steps in finding space to how we first of all recognize and then address our emotions. And through this, we can come across any challenges that are thrown at us. And like Alicia Moore says, we can get over those emotional punches. We get better and better each time.
I hope this has been interesting for all of you who are listening, allows you to relate to it. You can reflect on where you are now and you can rise. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. It's been
Yuen
and Mike, and you have been listening to the Imperfect Clinician podcast.
You can follow the Imperfect Clinician on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. You will find all the information about our episodes on our website, theimperfectclinician.com, where you can join the discussion by leaving us a voicemail or comment.
If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast wherever you listen to it. Recommend the podcast to one person that will benefit from it. Join us next week for another conversation. Thank you for listening.